It's much better to have Canadians' tax dollars going into better services or freeing up space for the government to cut taxes than to be paying interest on the debt. And under the Liberal plan, more and more of your tax dollars going to pay just interest on the debt. Their plan doesn't give us any flexibility if we do head into a difficult situation. Ours does.
The Conservatives are promising to balance the budget within 5 years if elected. To do that, they would cut billions in spending and delay some of the previous government's infrastructure spending commitments. They say those savings would also pay for their promised universal tax cut, among other promises. Scheer announced the details today near Delta, BC. Later on, he's holding a campaign event in Langley. The CBC's David Cochrane is covering the Conservative campaign this week. He joins us now from where that announcement was made, just outside Delta. Hi, David. Nice to see you. What are your big takeaways from this?
Yeah, the big takeaway today is that a lot of the big ticket items were already announced. The universal tax cut is really the backbone. It's the spine of this platform, and it's backed up by a series of boutique tax credits. The key thing here is that this is the document right here. And by 2024, if all of this is implemented, there are $49 billion in tax cuts and spending over that period of time. And to pay for that, and to get rid of the existing deficits, which is a core promise by Andrew Scheer, there's $67 billion in cuts and new revenue. Now, the revenue is about $14 billion. It mostly comes from a tax on tech giants and also for a crackdown on tax evasion and tax avoidance, which is something they think can deliver billions of dollars. But the big number and the screaming headline coming from the critics is $53 billion in cuts and spending restraint. Now, some of that is pushing off infrastructure programs into the future, but then there are cuts to things like operations on an annual basis in government spending. Though they say they can do that without reducing the overall size of the public service, there's a pledge to protect jobs there. They're going to end corporate welfare. They're going to make cuts to foreign aid and scrap some liberal programs, such as a subsidy announced in the last budget to help companies convert their fleets of vehicles to electric cars. And to back all of this up, Vashi, is a promise that once the budget gets to balance, it will stay that way. They're promising balanced budget legislation that ties the salaries of the Prime Minister and the Cabinet to meeting that goal and making it a rule that any new dollar of new spending has to be matched by a dollar in savings to sort of force future governments to live within their means. So they say it's a path to balance that will be relatively painless. The critics, of course, think there's going to be a lot of pain, Vashi.
Yeah, and tell me about those critics, particularly the Liberals. They are attacking this already. Tell me what they're saying.
Yeah, they attacked this even before it got out. And this is something that should alarm the Conservatives. We've seen several times throughout this campaign that the Liberals have had information from inside the Conservative campaign. They've known about events and they've gotten emails. Today, they had the platform. They were tweeting out details and images from the official Conservative platform before Andrew Scheer had even released it to the public. So somehow they got it. They are highlighting the cuts and restraint lines and trying to put a negative spin on it. And one of the things that Scheer said when asked about all of this today in terms of how can you do this plan without serious cuts, he used a line that reminded a lot of people of Doug Ford, saying that they protect core government services while fixing the finances. They have jumped all over that right away. Their stretch run strategy for the Liberals is to hammer home the Doug Ford and the cuts thing. And they think the platform, now that it's out just before the Thanksgiving weekend, the Liberals think they have the ammunition they need.
All right. Thanks, David. Really appreciate the update. The CBC's David Cochrane near Delta, British Columbia, covering the Conservative campaign this week.
I believe very strongly in investing in people, and I don't believe we build a better society or a better country by cutting services. So I'm firmly opposed to austerity. And a lot of times when people hear balanced budgets, they hear austerity and they hear cutting their services. And I don't believe in that.
NDP Leader Jagmeet Singh released his party's costed platform this morning. They're promising tax hikes on the rich to pay for big promises like pharmacare and free dental care. He unveiled those details in Ottawa. Later, he stopped over in Montreal before heading to Brampton, Ontario. The CBC's Hannah Thibodeau is covering that campaign for us this week. Hannah?
Hey Vashi, NDP Leader Jagmeet Singh made big promises that'll cost big bucks. There are over 70 new spending measures in the platform that'll cost more than $35 billion. And that's in the first year alone. Everything from national pharmacare, building affordable housing, to interest-free tuition for students. So to pay for it, Singh says they'll increase the taxes on the super wealthy, including raising corporate taxes. And that's expected to bring in $6 billion. There's also a super wealth tax, so that will add an extra $5.5 billion. But the single biggest revenue source will be through increasing the capital gains tax. Now, that's a tax on profits made from either selling a second home or a cottage, or from investments like shares, stocks, and bonds. The tax would increase from 50% to 75%. And that won't just impact the super wealthy.
The majority of people impacted by this will be the wealthiest. There are some that will be impacted in a small way, that are not the wealthiest in society. But what we're doing is saying effectively, if you earn salary, you would pay your taxes based on salary, and we treat capital gains a little bit differently. There's still going to be an advantage. It's still going to be 25% less than if you earn that salary directly.
As for balancing the books over the next 4 years, there's no plan for that. And Singh defends this by saying he isn't for austerity and cutting services. So the NDP are projecting a $32.7 billion deficit for 2020. Vashi.
Thanks, Hannah. The CBC's Hannah Thibodeau traveling with the NDP campaign this week. Liberal leader Justin Trudeau is questioning the timing of the Conservatives' platform release, as David alluded to. Take a listen.
You don't release your best work at 6 o'clock on a Friday of a long weekend.
Trudeau held a rally this morning while clutching, as you see there, his own party's platform. It was released less than 2 weeks ago. That took place in Ottawa before he boarded a plane to campaign over in Surrey, BC and Burnaby, BC in the riding of NDP Leader Jagmeet Singh. The CBC's Salima Shivji is covering that campaign. Salima?
Vashi, Justin Trudeau started his morning early, rallying a crowd of Liberal supporters and staff, seemingly with a bounce in his step, seeing as all of the debates are now behind him and he, as the incumbent, has emerged relatively unscathed. Now, at those remarks, he repeated a line from last night's French debate aimed directly at the Francophone vote and the momentum that the Bloc Québécois has in Quebec, a momentum that seems to be hurting the Liberal bid for a second majority. Justin Trudeau said that he thinks Quebecers want to be part of the action and not to have their power parked in opposition. Trudeau also took a swipe at the Tories and the fact that they are releasing their costed platform this afternoon. He joked that nobody releases anything important on a Friday before a long weekend. Now, we're in Vancouver now, and the Liberals really want to highlight what they're going to do to relieve the financial burden on university students, a bit of relief over when to repay your student loans. But this is really a whirlwind West Coast visit. We're here in Surrey, we're going to be in Port Coquitlam and then Burnaby, but this is the pace to get used to, the final sprint as the campaign nears its end. Vashi.
Thanks, Salima. The CBC's Salima Shivji reporting on the Liberal campaign. Hi, I'm Vashi Capellos, host of Power in Politics. See more of our show by subscribing to the CBC News channel or click the link for another video.